everybody, how's it going? This is Danny, the Wicked Awesome Gardener, coming at you from the Wicked Awesome Garden. It's still a little chilly out today, not quite 50 degrees, but I'm outside, was working on filling the beds, need to take a break, and need to go out and buy a wheelbarrow. But I figured I would come at you with just a really short video about growing zones. My general philosophy on growing zones is they don't matter, but they do. But they don't, but they do. But mostly, for my purposes, they don't. So for a short explanation of what growing zones are, North America is divided up into zones. And this really isn't so much the Northeast, the South, the Pacific Northwest, all of that. That's not really what it is. You'll notice if you look at a map, the zones kind of go like this and flow with the country, and it really is a judge of the average low temperatures for your area, and that tells you what your plants are hardy to for your zone, what plants are going to survive in your area at the coldest average temperature. These zones are adjusted every so often whenever they feel that there's been enough of a shift to warrant that. I believe the last major update to growing zones was in 2012. So I am on the coast of Massachusetts. We are sort of almost our own microclimate here because of the effect that the air temperatures off the water kind of play in with how our temperatures go. So while most of Massachusetts is zone 6A or 5B, I am in the little bit of it that is a 6B climate. So here is why I don't really pay attention to zone. For the average vegetable gardener, you're growing annuals. You are growing your tomatoes, your peppers, things that aren't going to make it for you, unless you live in the very southern climates of the US, are not going to make it through the winter. So come the end of October, we get a killing frost here, which is going to kill just about everything in my garden. The things that might make it through are like the Brussels sprouts, kale. Kale is very, very winter hardy, and I will be growing plenty of that because I want to be eating some kale this winter. So we'll see how that all turns out. So when it comes to growing vegetables, annual plants that you're going to have to replant from seed or buy new starts next year, ignore zone. Pay no attention. It really does not have any bearing. What you really want to focus on is frost dates. Here in Massachusetts, where I am, and you can go to the farmersalmanac.com or gardens.com, one of those sites, or you can just put into Google last frost date for your zip code, and that will tell you when your last frost date is. So then when you are planting tomatoes and you're starting your seeds, it says to plant 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. So then you would take your last frost date, which for me is April 30th, count back 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. For me, I have a seedling sale. So I planted early and I have a lot more established plants because that's what people want when they're at a seedling sale. They want some really established starts. So I start about 10 weeks. Don't do that if you're planting for your own garden. So you take your last frost date, count back 6 weeks, and that is when you start your seeds. On the flip side of that, there is also your first frost date in the fall. For me this year, they're projecting it to be somewhere around October 20th. So if you want a fall harvest of certain plants, and you can do fall gardens with just about anything. Don't let anybody tell you that you're nuts if you're planting zucchini or cucumbers in July or the very beginning of August if you have an October frost date. Because as long as you have enough time for them to germinate, to get established, and have a few weeks of production, grow it, do it, break the rules. And this is really what it comes down to, is everybody's like, I'm in zone 6B, I'm in zone 5, I'm in zone 8. What can I start now? Is it too late to start? It's never too late to start because you'll still have all that growing space. You might not have time to get maybe as much harvest if you start something like peppers in July. Peppers take so long to get going and get productive. You're probably not going to really get anything in October. You might get a few and then they're going to be gone. So for most things, it is not too late for anything. Right now, it's only the middle of March. You have months to get a harvest going. So if you start tomatoes 3 months from now, you'll still get some, you just won't get as many. Why I say that zone should not be your major consideration when planting annual vegetables. Different areas within your zone can have totally different last and first frost dates. For example, as I said, I am in Massachusetts, a little bit north of Boston. I'm zone 6B. There are areas in Tennessee that are also 6B, but they have a frost date that's a full 2.5 weeks earlier than mine. And they have a first frost date that is 2 or so weeks later. So they have an extra month of growing time that I don't get. So if they don't get something started, they might miss a window of having that extra production, and they have more time to get production. So definitely do not pay attention to zones when it comes to planting annual vegetables. And that goes for flowers too. The other things that zones don't take into account is your average rainfall, your humidity. It doesn't factor any of that in. So you really need to look at the plant that you're planting, figure out, is this going to work in my own microclimate? Because that zone stretches from California all the way up into Massachusetts. So it goes all the way across the country. You're going to have vastly different conditions, even within zones. Because 6B also runs through Arizona, where there are some very hot, dry areas. It also runs through areas in the Midwest. So there's a lot of things that zone is not going to tell you about the growing conditions you're going to have and whether or not you're going to be able to successfully grow something in your area. So really look at each plant that you're growing, make sure it's appropriate for your own personal climate, and that's what you really should consider is your growing season, not so much your zone. When zone does matter, though, is if you're trying to get something to grow through winter and just have it keep coming back year after year, your perennial plants. This year, I am planting blueberry bushes, so I need to make sure that they are appropriate for my zone. So it doesn't just mean that, okay, it's going to get too cold for things, or yes, this plant can stand it being this cold. You also have to think about, is it going to be too hot? Because some things won't produce fruit. So there are cherry trees that would grow wonderfully up here, but if you try to grow them in Florida, they're not going to fruit because it's just too hot. They're going to maybe not blossom, or they're going to blossom and shrivel up, and that'll just be that. I went window shopping for blueberries yesterday, and I resisted because it's not time to plant them quite yet. But the blueberries that I saw were hardy between zones 5 and 8. That means that it's going to be cool enough that they're going to be able to blossom and fruit, but it's not going to get so cold in winter that it's just going to kill them outright. So hopefully you gain an understanding from this. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comment box. I would love to talk about this more because I think it's one of the greatest misunderstandings about growing gardens and growing food, and I think that it really intimidates people thinking, oh no, I'm too late, I missed my window, I can't grow that. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, please click here for more content. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on our latest videos. Thank you so much for watching. I'm really excited to go through this journey with you while we grow something wicked awesome from yard to table.